Do not kill the soul that Allah has made sanctified. ومن أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. And because of that, because of Qabil killing Habil, the Quran tells us, Allah wrote upon Bani Israel and upon everyone else that he who kills one soul, it's as if he's killed the entire humanity. فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. So the Quran gives the first right, and that is the right to live. Every human being has the right to live. We have absolutely no authority to take the life of others. Unless this person has committed a crime, then this is another topic. Unless this person has murdered another soul, then this is another topic. Every person has the right to live. Number 2, freedom of religion, freedom of faith. Islam says that you have the right to practice your faith regardless of what the faith is. You can practice that faith. Any faith. You don't have to be Muslim. Yes, between you and Allah, you have to choose the religion that you believe is right. But here on earth, no one can judge you. No one can force you. In an Islamic nation, a Christian will not be forced to convert to Islam. A Jewish person will not be forced to convert to Islam. لا إكراه في الدين. This is a general principle. لا إكراه في الدين. There's no compulsion in faith and in religion. Allah tells the Prophet, فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. You will deliver the message and we will judge. You will not judge. لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِجَبَّارٍ. You are not someone to enforce faith onto others. Your job is to deliver the message. Tell the people what to do. Deliver to them the message. Now whether they choose to accept or not accept, that is not your job. إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرٌ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ. Your job is to remind, Ya Rasulullah. You're a reminder. You will not enforce religion on others. You give people the freedom to choose their own faith, to choose their own religion, to choose their own school of thought. They wish not to become Muslim? Khalas. That is up to them. They will have to deal with God on the Day of Judgment. Here on earth, you cannot force. This is 2. 3, the Quran promotes the rule of majority and democracy. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. The Quran says that their affairs are of consultation. And this opens for us an entire door of discussions. That is the Quran promoting the rule of the majority. The Quran is promoting democracy. That there's no dictatorship in Islam. There's no rule of one individual. Their affairs have to be of consultation and of shura. Your voice counts. Even if you're a minority, your voice counts. You have the right to speak. You have the right to vote. You have the right to choose your political leader. This is ordained in the Quran. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. And this principle of shura existed even at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran says, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ. Consult them in their affairs. Consult them. Seek their advice. See what they say. Get their opinion. A 4th right that we find in the Quran for human rights, the right of education, to seek knowledge, to educate yourself. This is a right. This is a right that Islam accepts and Islam recognizes that every individual, man or woman, child or adult, has the right to an education, has the right to seek knowledge. يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises the status of those who believe among you and those who seek knowledge and those who have knowledge. This gives us the basic right to seek knowledge, the right to an education. The Quran gives us the right to travel. and to migrate. In some places you're not allowed to migrate. You're told not to enter this country or that country. You need a visa, you need an application, you need a sponsor. While the Quran says that human beings have the right to travel. Allah has created this earth for human beings, and they may go from place to place, from land to land, without restrictions, without the need for passports, without the need for visas. The right to migrate. أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. Some people will come on the Day of Judgment and say that we were not able to practice our religion freely. We were persecuted. Allah will tell them that didn't I create an entire earth for you? Couldn't you have migrated from one country to another country? From one place to another place? قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Say, travel in this land. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. Walk on God's great land and eat from His sustenance. The right to migrate and the right to travel and the right to move from place to place. A sixth right that the Quran promotes, the right of ownership. You have the right to own what you've made. You worked, you made income, you've owned a land, you can own. In Islam, you can own property and own. لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْ. Men and women. In England, up to 200 years ago, women were not able to own. Here in the US, up to 100 years ago, now that they speak of feminism and rights for women, when did these rights come here in the West? After World War I and World War II. When men had traveled across the globe to enter into battlefields and wars, they needed women to enter the factories to work. They encouraged women to work. Not because they fought for women's rights, but because they needed women in factories. They wanted them to work. And do you think that men and women were paid equally? No. Here in the United States, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, there was a wage gap. What men were receiving and what men were receiving. And the right to ownership. Islam says that men have the right to own what they possess, what they make, and women have the right to possess and own what they make. The right of ownership. Number 7, حق العمل, the right to work. The Quran tells us 14 centuries ago that you have the right to work. You can make a living for yourself, and no one can stop you. You can work any job that you'd like. You can make any sort of income that you'd like, and no one can stop you. Unless you harm others, or you harm your community, or you harm yourself. Like you sell weapons, or you sell alcohol. That's another story. But if it has no harm for yourself, or your community, or your nation, work. Do business. Make money. Produce. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى. This is one verse. Another verse. ولا تنس نصيبك من الدنيا. Don't forget your time in this dunya. Work for the next life. Work for the hereafter. But also make time for this dunya as well. And a hadith that he who does not work for his dunya, he who is lazy to work for dunya, he doesn't have a job, he doesn't have a salary because he's lazy, then he will be more lazy to work for the akhirah. If he can't make a living here, then he's lazier for the akhirah. Work, make money. وَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. كُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. Eat from his sustenance. How? Not freely, but by working. When the Quran says eat his sustenance, it means work for his sustenance. Go out and work. Go out in the fields. Go and make a living. So the right to work. The right to work. Islam has recognized this right 14 centuries ago. Number 8, حق الأجرة للأجير. The right of wage. You have someone working for you, he deserves a wage. You give him his wage. And you give him the wage that he deserves, not what you want to give him, but the wage that he deserves. Here in the United States, there's something called a minimum wage. And they brag about having a minimum wage. The Quran spoke of a minimum wage 14 centuries ago in the Quran. وَيَا قَوْمِ أَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. You have a worker, he deserves $50 a day, you give him $50 a day. He deserves $100 a day, you give him $100 a day. You give every worker what he deserves, what others are receiving. This was 14 centuries ago. The idea of minimum wage, that you don't steal people's money. You don't take from people's wages. You give them what they deserve. Number 9, the Quran speaks of honoring agreements. Honoring agreements, whether it's a business transaction or a political deal or a deal between two companies or two tribes or two individuals, honor that agreement. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ. There's an agreement between you and another individual. There's a business agreement, or two companies, or two nations, or two continents. There's an agreement. Uphold that agreement. Don't disrespect the other person. Don't oppress the other person by stepping aside and not respecting that agreement. You have an agreement, uphold that agreement. أوفوا بالعقود. This is part of people's rights and humans' rights. Number 10, the Quran speaks of the right of heirs. Heirs. The heirs have rights. وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. In the beginning of Islam, when the migrants from Mecca and the helpers, the Ansar of Medina, Rasulullah made them brothers. And this brotherhood entailed the same rights as biological brotherhood. So a Muhajir and an Ansari, they would inherit one another until this verse was revealed. وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. That your biological relatives are a priority for you than the Muhajirin and Ansar. So this brotherhood was temporary. What happened between the brotherhood between Al-Muhajirin and Ansar was temporary. And by the way, this shows that in Islam, some laws are meant to be temporary. Not all laws are general for the Day of Judgment, till the Day of Judgment. Some laws were meant to be temporary. This shows us that in the Islamic legal system, we have two kinds of laws. Laws that are general until the Day of Judgment, and laws that are temporary for specific times and for specific places. Your relative has a right to inheritance. The Quran speaks the right of your children. يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ. Allah reminds us of our children and the rights of our children. Allah reminds us the rights of our parents. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. The Quran speaks of the rights of orphans. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. 14 centuries ago, the Quran established all of these rights. All of these rights have been mentioned in the Quran 14 centuries ago. But the West today is trying to teach us Muslims and Muslim countries regarding human rights. We'll continue in the second khutbah, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم وتحنن على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين. اللهم وصل على البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. اللهم وصل على سيدي شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين. اللهم وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. عباد الله وإماء الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل وإطاعة أمره. Despite the fact that the Quran spoke of human rights 1,400 years ago, we see that Muslim countries today are the most lacking in human rights, or the most lacking in human rights. The rights that we just talked about, where do you find them in our part of the world, in the Islamic part of the world? Number one, haqqul hayat, the right to live. Do you find that everywhere? Especially countries that speak in the name of Islam. Countries where 2 or 3 million pilgrims go every year for Hajj, and other millions go for Umrah. Biladul Haramain, a country that is home to the 2 Haram. Do people have rights in that country? Are there human rights in that country? Is there a right to live in that country? Did we not read just a couple of months ago or a couple of weeks ago that a 16-year-old teenager is sentenced to death? Is sentenced to being executed in that country. For what? For participating in a rally with his bicycle. With his bicycle. He was condemned to death. I don't know, did they execute him or not? Possibly they're still waiting on killing him, cutting off his head. This is in one of the Islamic countries. The freedom to practice your religion and school of thought, does that exist in our countries? In some countries you can't build a Shi'i mosque. A mosque. You're not allowed to build a mosque, a masjid, as long as it's a Shi'i mosque. You cannot publish books that are Shi'i books in certain countries. Is this la ikraha fi din? Is this the freedom of religion? The right to vote and to elect, the majority rule. Which of our countries have democratically elected governments? Maybe 1 or 2. The rest are all dictatorships. The majorities are crushed before the minorities. They're crushed. They don't have a say into politics. The right to seek knowledge and education, does it exist in all of our countries? Look at our universities and our schools back home. We have the worst schools and the worst universities. We have the worst educational systems back home when our Holy Scriptures spoke of the right to seek knowledge 14 centuries ago. Do we have the right to travel and migrate in the Middle East? No. When the Syrian people were being crushed by both sides, by their government and by Jubhat al-Nusra and ISIS and the likes of ISIS, Syrians fled. They left. Where did they go? Which countries accepted Syrians? Saudi Arabia, or the Emirates, or Qatar? Which of these countries accepted Syria? They all came to Europe. Islam and the Quran that encourages migration and travel and does not put restrictions on travel, it was the first nations that stopped these Syrians from coming into their countries were these Islamic countries, were the Muslim countries. Do we practice human rights? Do we encourage human rights? حق التمليك وحق الملك. Do we have ownership? It depends. In some countries, It depends. Are you a citizen of that country or not? If you're not a citizen, even if you live 100 years and your children and your grandchildren live in that country, you can't own a home. You can't own an apartment. You have to live on rent your entire life. Is this human rights? Haqqul amal, the right to work. Also, it depends in certain countries back home, especially the Gulf countries. It depends on your citizenship and on your nationality. What passport do you carry? If you're a citizen, you get to work and you're spoiled. But if you come from different countries, it's very hard finding a job. As for the right of workers, minimum wage and the right of workers, do we have rights? Do workers have rights? Go and look in certain Gulf countries, the status of workers, especially workers from Pakistan and Bangladesh and these countries. Do those people have rights? With my own eyes, once, in the holiest place on earth, in Mecca, I saw with my own eyes. I was sitting with a taxi driver, and the taxi was waiting for us to ride in Masjid al-Haram, right next to Masjid al-Haram. He was a Pakistani driver. Because he was delayed for a couple of minutes, the Saudi police officer, he put his hand and he started to choke the driver. He started to choke him. Because the driver did not drive. Because he delayed for 2 minutes, for 2-3 minutes. But if it was a Saudi, he would not be treated this way. But because this individual is from Pakistan, he was treated in this manner. And look at other countries, look at Qatar, look at the Emirates, look at Kuwait and these spoiled Gulf countries. Look at how they treat their workers. Do they believe in human rights? Do they believe in the rights of workers? Of course not. And so on and so forth. Unfortunately, our Quran spoke of values, and we are the last people to implement these values. The Quran spoke of principles, and our countries are the last countries to implement these principles. And the worst part is that the West remains silent. The West that speaks of human rights and democracy and freedom for people, they speak when it's in their interest. When it's not in their interest, they give a complete blind eye. They give a complete blind eye. As I mentioned in the first khutbah, Yemen, the people of Yemen do not deserve any rights. The people of Yemen are not humans. They're not people. They don't deserve rights. But who is calling for the rights of the people of Yemen? Did we ever see anyone in the West, any leaders, political leaders in the West, that called for the rights of the people of Yemen? Or in Bahrain? Or in other parts of the country? Unfortunately, here when they speak of human rights, it's a double standard. As long as it fits their narrative, it fits their interests abroad, they speak of human rights. Otherwise, they don't. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bring peace and stability to that part of the world, to our countries, our homes, to bring them peace and stability. Allahumma ansur al-Islam wal-Muslimin. Allahumma shfi kulla marid. Allahumma dawi kulla jarih. Allahumma ksu kulla uryan. Allahumma ashbi' kulla ja'i'. Allahumma aghni kulla faqir. اللهم اقضي دين كل مدين اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك وغير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك واقض عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وأستغفر الله لي ولكم